Hey, so I wanted to share something that I read from Alice Miller's book, The Drama of the Gifted Child. And what she was saying was that in the infant stage of human development, we are essentially narcissists. So we feel entitled and we demand that our needs be met immediately, and we see others as objects, and we don't acknowledge the needs of other people. And we're basically extremely selfish. And that is a normal stage of infant development where the mother is supposed to meet all of the baby's needs, and the mother really only exists to the baby as the person who meets their needs. But then when you think about narcissistic personality disorder, they've essentially just never outgrown that stage, and they've maintained that sense of entitlement to have their needs met by everyone else into their adulthood, which connects to the idea that narcissism is a form of complex PTSD, and it's a coping strategy that they've used to deal with trauma because their parent was not able to meet their narcissistic needs in infancy, which would allow a child to come out of that phase and then develop normally. But it also happened to all the children of a narcissistic parent that they don't progress out of that stage because the narcissistic parent cannot meet the needs of the child, which is why all children of a mentally ill parent or an alcoholic parent or whatever will end up with complex PTSD. But then obviously the children can have differences in the way that happens, and some become narcissists and some don't. And that's something that I still haven't fully figured out for myself, how that happens. And I don't know how that works, but I think it's related possibly to the role that the child is given, like whether they're a golden child or a scapegoat, and it could have to do with maybe other factors in that child's life, like if they had other role models to model like healthy behavior for them and to give them love and attention, or what F response they chose, like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. I think that has an impact. And then also gender and birth order would affect how the parent is going to treat the child. So there are lots of factors involved in like how a person becomes a narcissist, but I think the main way for me to understand it is basically that they are like frozen in that infant stage, and they're in a state of emotional flashback to that stage. I think we talk about narcissistic injury, and I think that that just has to do with their trauma wounding, and they're being triggered into just wanting so desperately to be loved, really. Like that's what all trauma is that they needed someone to love them and their parent didn't, and they're just not able to progress out of that stage. So in addition to being stuck in that infant phase, some other theories of narcissism include a negative entity or demonic attachment, which actually does fit with the trauma kind of model, because negative entities will attach to trauma in a person, and that's like how they actually form that relationship. And then another one is that they're just like a supply seeking robot, which is kind of what Sam Vaknin talks about. Like everything a narcissist does is for supply, and they have to seek supply because they're not in touch with their true self, which is how most people have like their sense of self and their sense of worth. But because a narcissist is rejecting their own soul, basically they have to get their sense of self from outside of themselves. And also there are different archetypes of humanity, and like one of those archetypes I think is narcissism. So I think it exists within humans to play out that archetype, and it would just, again, depend on factors that I don't really have all the answers for, but we can activate that archetype and be a narcissist as opposed to the other archetypes. And another aspect of narcissism that I find strange, I guess, is the idea that they see themselves as gods in their own reality, and that's why they're not able to perceive the needs of others, because they just see everything as an extension of themselves, or that like they're the only thing that matters. And I think that that actually does also relate to the infant trauma thing, because the infant does see themselves as the only thing that matters, and the mother only exists to meet the infant's needs. So I think Alice Miller's description of early infant trauma really does explain like a lot of the aspects of narcissism. Obviously it's super dysfunctional to be behaving as an infant while you're an adult, which is why we observe their behavior as being very bizarre and definitely childlike. Like, it's pretty obvious when they kind of throw their temper tantrums or do their passive aggressive mind games that the behavior is very childish. So it might kind of help to like frame it in that way, because sometimes I just view them as being really evil, and it's kind of satisfying in a way, but it's also not very empowering because it just makes you afraid of them. So instead, it might help to just view them as like a child stuck in an adult body. And that's not to say that they don't do damaging things. Obviously they do, but it's not, I don't know if I believe that they're truly evil. I think they're just extremely damaged to the point where they just have no perception of reality, and they're just acting out of this subconscious trauma wounding pattern that they don't really understand, but they also don't like have a way out of. So I kind of flip-flop between having pity for them and then being really angry at them. So I don't know, this was just my rambling thought. I'd love to hear what you think narcissists are, or how they perceive the world, or just what your opinions are in general on the topic. So thank you for watching.